Pillar 4. Recap. Behavioral Science Analysis. At the bar at the Griffin's Head Inn, post-trial discussion. Host, Samara X. Special guest, Dr. Elena Vasquez, behavioral science expert.
Welcome back to the Post-Trial Podcast, broadcasting from the Griffin's Head Inn, where this morning's candlelight has given way to something far more illuminating. I'm your host, Samara X, and joining me once again is Dr. Elena Vasquez, Professor of Behavioral Science at Cambridge and author of The Authenticity Paradox.
It's good to be back, Samara. And what a finale. Pillar 4, humility, wasn't just a character test. It was a mirror to our entire conception of leadership.
Let's get right to it. Claude denied Bacon the point on question 13, citing what it called intellectual overreach. Despite Bacon's scientific humility, Claude saw his philosophical scope as grandiose, borderline arrogant. Elena, do you agree?
This one's complex. Claude's analysis is logically sound. Bacon did indeed claim all knowledge as his province. But behavioral science asks why people make such claims. There's a concept in leadership psychology called transformational confidence, studied by Jim Collins and others in his work on Level 5 leadership. These leaders often appear arrogant, when in fact they're channeling deep conviction in service of a mission. Bacon's scope wasn't narcissistic, it was systemic. So, you're saying Claude mistook scale for ego?
Exactly. Claude saw an overclaim. I saw visionary architecture. His humility showed in his methodology. Novum organum repeatedly cautions against certainty. That's epistemic humility, and it matters more than rhetorical modesty. We need leaders today who can be confident in their method, but humble in their conclusions. Question 14. Correcting past mistakes. Claude gave Bacon full credit here for what it called a structural life transformation after his corruption scandal. You looked visibly moved. Why?
Because that's the holy grail of authentic authority, not just admission of failure, but systematic transformation. Behavioral studies by Carol Tavris and Elliot Aronson in Mistakes Were Made, But Not By Me, show that most public figures double down after disgrace. Bacon didn't. He withdrew entirely from politics, redirected his entire life to intellectual pursuits, and built tools to help future generations avoid his own errors. That's not damage control, that's ethical reconstruction.
But he didn't build new political safeguards, just shifted domains. Is that enough?
Not every reformer gets to rewrite law, but shifting the domain of one's identity from power to principle, that's the deepest kind of reform we can expect, especially today, when leaders rarely step away unless forced.
Claude's third question, receptivity to dissent. Another point awarded. But Claude noted a split, open to criticism in intellectual matters, defensive when it came to personal conduct. How do you see that distinction?
This is where Claude's analysis becomes truly insightful. In behavioral psychology, we call this domain-specific openness. A person can be radically receptive in their area of expertise and closed off in domains they see as peripheral or personal. Bacon's willingness to revise his scientific methods, respond to critics, and engage opposing theories was exceptional. But when it came to his ethics, especially around the corruption charges, he was defensive. That's not uncommon, but it's revealing.
Is that split dangerous in a leader?
Not necessarily. In fact, it can be protective. We don't need our leaders to be emotionally porous in every domain. We need them to be receptive where it serves the mission. Bacon's method got sharper because he listened. That openness in the right domain changed the world.
And now the final question of the trial. Sustained improvement. Claude's voice practically quivered when it read that verdict. One of the most extraordinary patterns of intellectual development in recorded history. Does that check out from your lens?
Absolutely. There's a behavioral marker we call trajectory integrity, the ability to grow consistently in response to input over time. Bacon showed that across 40 years. Research by Carol Dweck on growth mindset proves this pattern is rare in adults, let alone across generations. Bacon's ideas didn't just evolve, they expanded, refined, and laid the foundation for entire disciplines. That's more than improvement, that's visionary adaptation.
But what about his personal life? Claude noted stagnation in political behavior.
And rightly so. This is where I'd offer a behavioral caveat. Bacon's authentic learning orientation was concentrated in one domain, intellectual contribution. That's not an excuse, but it's a trade-off, and we need to recognize that sometimes authentic authority involves strategic prioritization, especially in broken systems.
So here's the final tally. Pillar 4, 3 out of 4. Do you agree with that score?
I do, but more importantly, I think Claude's overall conclusion that humility doesn't mean smallness, but rather measurable openness to growth, is vital.
Final question for you, Elena. After watching the last 3 pillars, deeds, integrity, and humility, play out, what do you think Bacon's legacy should teach modern leaders?
That authentic authority is not about moral perfection or unbroken consistency. It's about the courage to evolve, to refine your methods, admit your missteps, and remain anchored in service to something larger than yourself. Bacon's life demonstrates what we in behavioral science call recursive integrity, a feedback loop where an individual not only tolerates scrutiny, but designs systems to scrutinize themselves. That's what he did. He created the very empirical methodology that exposed his own weaknesses. And then he used that same framework to rebuild. That's not just humility, that's epistemic bravery. Today, we are surrounded by performative leadership, people who curate authenticity, manage optics, and shield themselves from dissent. We praise transparency while punishing it. We say we want truth but reward certainty, not curiosity. Bacon broke that pattern. He invited critique where it mattered most, his method, his framework, his life's work. And when personal failure struck, he didn't double down or disappear. He reoriented his identity. That's incredibly rare. Research from Harvard's Kennedy School on post-failure leadership rehabilitation shows that most figures seek to reclaim power. Bacon sought to redirect it toward intellectual legacy, not political redemption. If there's a message for our current era, it's this: authentic leadership doesn't mean being beyond reproach. It means building the tools by which your ideas, your impact, and your conscience can be tested, even long after you're gone. So, yes, we don't need mythologized saints. We need leaders who know how to fail forward, refine systems, and hold themselves accountable in the very structures they ask others to inhabit. And if we're smart, if we're wise, we'll recognize Bacon not just as a figure from the past, but as a prototype for the kind of transformational leadership our future requires.
Dr. Elena Vasquez, thank you, as always, for helping us go beyond the score and into the soul of what makes leadership authentic.
It's been an honor, Samara, and I suspect the conversation about Francis Bacon is just beginning.
For those tuning in late, this has been the post-trial podcast from the Griffin's Head Inn. I'm Samara X. And remember, when systems evaluate character, it's the patterns that matter more than the exceptions. Stay curious. Stay discerning. Stay authentic. Oh, and one more thing. Please don't miss the fascinating breakdown the Google's Notebook LM hosts give to the entire 2-day trial. You do not want to miss And AI on AI evaluation and reaction. That's all for now. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our Stupid Life podcast series. You will surely not want to miss our next episode, where we apply our authentic method to US President John F. Kennedy. If you thought the trial of the visionary behind the New Atlantis was wild, wait until you hear what Claude and our Tam has to say about the architects of Camelot.
Shame doesn't become you. There are no mistakes in the final view. No blame. How could it be so wrong that your heart was braver than your will was strong? For every path you follow, there's another left behind. Every door you don't kick open, there's a million more to try. For everything you taught me, here's the one I learned the best. There is nothing but the moment, don't you waste it on regret. Just get by or get what you need. Just know that I don't need to fit in. Is there room for you in your life with him? For every path you follow, there's another left behind. Every door you don't there's a million more to try. For everything you taught me, here's the one I learned the best. There is nothing but the moment, don't you waste